What were the major differences between the feds and anti-feds? How did the argument of the feds and anti-feds reflect their points of view regarding natural rights, republicanism, and the powers of states? Why are the Federalists and anti-federalists still relevant today? When you're ready, you may begin.
E pluribus unum. Ad mini one. The Constitution of the United States arose from many contrasting viewpoints between the Federalists and Anti-Federalists. The major differences between the two reside in the views upon national versus state government and the representation of each. These differences are illustrated within the Federalist and Anti-Federalist papers. In turn, the philosophies of these documents are evident in the Constitution. These Federalist and Anti-Federalist philosophies are also still relevant today through states becoming laboratories of democracy.
Federalist paper number 85 by Alexander Hamilton states, "A nation without a national government is an awful spectacle." Hamilton's belief that a strong national government was necessary characterizes the Federalist argument. However, anti-Federalist ideas about the federal government strongly contrasted those of the Federalists, as seen in Patrick Henry's statement that the Constitution is not an instrument for the government to restrain the people, it is an instrument for the people to restrain the government. The uniting belief of different anti-Federalist groups was that the people were sovereign, not the government. This idea can be further seen in Anti-Federalist Essay 3 by John DeWitt. The people choose to direct their affairs under a government of their own choosing.
The values of Federalists and Anti-Federalists on classical republicanism, natural rights, and the powers of the states are embodied within the Constitution, as there are provisions for both empowering and limiting the federal government in an effort to protect individual rights and the common good. Both agreed on the importance of natural rights. However, the Anti-Federalists felt that they were not properly protected within the Constitution. As stated in Brutus No. 2, on this subject there is an almost entire silence.
The result of the Anti-Federalist disagreement led to the creation of the Bill of Rights. Another Anti-Federalist victory in the Constitution is seen in Article 4, Section 1, the Full Faith and Credit Clause. A contract signed in any one state has to be honored in all states, which retains states' rights by validating their contracts and documents. Opponents of the Articles of Confederation fought for a bicameral legislature in their Virginia plan, while proponents wanted a single-chamber legislature in their New Jersey plan. These two plans were combined to create the system we have today. It can be seen in Article 1, Sections 2 and 3, which establish the Senate and House of Representatives.
Some of the debate about federal versus state power was resolved with the decision of McCulloch versus Maryland. The Supreme Court's decision to invoke the Necessary and Proper Clause upheld the establishment of the U.S. Bank. This decision set the precedent that Congress has implied powers, aside from those that are explicitly stated within the Constitution, as long as these powers result in actions that benefit the nation, which embodies the idea of classical republicanism.
The disagreement over the balance of power was one of the many factors that eventually led to the succession of the Southern states. The Civil War was the greatest conflict over states' rights, and President Lincoln followed the Federalist idea of national unity when he said, "A house divided against itself cannot stand." Though the Civil War was resolved with the nation reuniting, the debate over states' power did not entirely end. It is still applicable to modern issues.
As David Osborne stated in his famous work, Laboratories of Democracy, today at both state and local levels, we are in the midst of a new progressive era. Successful programs on the state level often become federally implemented. Before becoming a signature program of the New Deal, Social Security originated in California, and the passage of the Affordable Care Act in 2010 in many ways mirrored the health care program instituted in Massachusetts. In the most recent election, Colorado and Washington will experiment with decriminalizing recreational marijuana, which begs the question, if successful, will this become a national policy?
Out of the crucible of the debate between the Federalists and the Anti-Federalists emerged important additions to the Constitution and questions that permeate in our society today. These debates are essential for preserving democracy today, as stated by Logan Pearsall Smith in Afterthoughts, "For souls in growth, great quarrels are great emancipations." Thank you.
Thank you. As long as you have a separate and independent executive and judicial branch, is a bicameralism necessary? I'll repeat my question. As long as you have a separate and independent executive and judiciary, is bicameralism necessary?
Yes, it is to balance the presence of large states versus small states in the national government. Because with just the Senate having equal representation, there would be, like, small states would have so much more say proportionally than large states would. And on the opposing view, having just a House of Representatives with proportional representation would give small states a lot less power, though they still have fair number of people whose ideas all should matter. So just because the judicial and the judicial and executive branches are independent does not mean that the legislature can successfully be unicameral.
Also within the Constitution, in Article 1, which defines the powers of Congress, it is much longer, and the list is, it enumerates more powers that Congress has versus Articles 2 and 3, which enumerate the powers of the judicial and executive branch, which implies that Congress has more powers which need to be checked, which can be done in a bicameral legislature.
However, I disagree because the executive and judicial are independent of the legislative branch. A bicameral house is not necessary because the executive and judicial can ultimately check the legislature branch, and it doesn't need to check itself.
Why did the Federalists think they could not rely on civic virtue to make the new national government work properly?
Alexander Hamilton stated in Federalist 51 that there were a diverse, or a presence of diverse opinions across the nation already. And he recognized that the classical republicanism idea of small homogeneous communities was already not possible in the United States.
Also, because the United States is so large, as Anna said, as stated in the Brutus 1, that the citizens would not care for a government so far away, and it's hard for them to protect the interests of others who live so far away when they're not in their circle of living.
The Federalists believed that state governments were likely to abuse their powers more than the federal government. Are there examples from history of this taking place?
Yeah, one example is after 1877, when Reconstruction ended, Jim Crow laws were implemented in many of the southern states. This directly went against the 14th Amendment, but they still allowed this, and this was eventually settled with Brown versus Board of Education.
Can you repeat the question?
How have states usurped the power of individuals? And been checked by the federal government.
Oh, well, in Plessy versus Ferguson, many states had separate but equal institutions when it came to separating race, and this usurps the right that many were not exposed to the same equal opportunities that the white people were to. And Brown versus Board of Education ultimately resolved this dispute in stating that separate is not equal.
Does the 6-year term of office for U.S. senators protect them from accountability of the American people? So why or why not?
Well, as former Illinois Senator Henry Hyde stated, elections are essentially term limits for senators. So they are checked, I guess, under that responsibility to the American people, that they have to keep the campaign promises they make to their constituents if they want to be reelected and have, in turn, another term limit.
It has been said that by many that the Federalists quote unquote won the debates. Do you agree or disagree?
I would agree because I think the ratification of the Constitution ultimately solidified the Federalist idea of a stronger national government over that of the state governments that was seen in the Articles of Confederation, and I think the Supremacy Clause within the Constitution establishes federal authority over these states.
I would have to disagree. I would feel the anti-federalists won the debate, especially this can be seen in the bill, right? Yeah. The Bill of Rights, which many anti-federalists fought for because they believed the rights were not enumerated within the Constitution.
According to our nation's history, the Federalists won the debate because with the establishment of judicial review in 1803 with Marbury versus Madison, the judicial branch gained power. And with the triumph of the Union over the southern states, states lost their power in face of federal power. And
Don't stop sign, stop. When you guys get a stop sign in your middle of process, just keep on going. No one else can answer, but you can keep going.
So you should just cram in as much information.
And on top of that, well, then there's.
I think you can ask yourself a question, so like, what about this?
You guys all right over here?
Where did those questions come from?
No, we
These all came from the last page of your cross-section stack.
made, Sunday we were making flashcards of those, and we specifically put those aside to ask you.
Oh my gosh.
Actually, just about
Is that why you were smiling?
Yeah, because I was like, we looked at these questions and we're like, oh, well, that's just for Clark.
Can I say one comment?
Yes.
On states usurping citizens' rights, you could use gerrymandering in it.
I was gonna talk about loving
Baker
two
v.
Virginia
Carr.
too, but I thought of it right from the start.
Baker v. Carr, Thornburg versus
Jingles.
Jingles, which is, Thornburg v. Jingles is where they, what state was it? North Carolina, separated the districts into, because there's a black community that should have been their like own district, but they separated that black community into separate districts
Staggy their vote.
so that their vote wouldn't be like one, and their vote didn't really matter in the other districts because they didn't have a large enough black population.
Also, you guys should probably update that part of your testimony about recreational marijuana, since it is post-election.
Why, what does it say?
It says will experiment.
Well, it hasn't, it's
Well,
not,
it's not.
it's not
But
completed, it's not
what
like,
they said, like, before that, like, how you're introducing it, like, implies that it's still, like,
In
We
the
say in the most recent election.
no, they said in the most recent election.
Colorado and Washington will experiment with decriminalizing weed.
Jack,
you've been to Colorado or Washington?
Which begs the question, if successful, will this become a national policy?
It's not in place yet, so even though they've elected, it's not in place.
Austin isn't the case too.
That was big.
I was just reading it. Can you answer the question?
There was one that you asked that I completely like forgot the second half of the question in the middle of when I was talking. And I didn't know what
Mike Hamill?
to. Maybe. I don't think anyone
I think it was the
else talked.
accountability.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just forgot.
My second question,
Yeah. I think so.
oh, so why did the Federalists think that they could not rely on just on civic virtue?
Oh, yeah, that one. And
Oh,
this-
there's a section with the people button. That says that.
Yeah.
I was trying to imagine it. I couldn't see it.
You use Fed 1, Brutus 1, you can also use Federalist 10, because now when he talks about how people will still get elected who are not virtuous, but
Okay.
how it will be protected, it'll be protected because you'll have more, because of so many factions, that so many factions and interests will be in place that even though one or two people get elected, they're gonna be still can't become a majority. Other examples of states usurping rights, you guys get the exact same answer first off.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I was,
You get the exact same
Happened in the
answer.
other room too once actually.
Okay. Denying women the right to vote before it became an amendment. I mean, a lot of states try it, but a lot of states are just like, nope, not gonna happen. You could also use during World War One, in addition to the Alien Sedition Acts, most states had even further criminal prosecution for anyone who was communist or socialist. Like if they gathered, it was illegal. Like even if they were just having a meeting, they would be put in prison. So I mean, it was huge. Nevada's gonna actually finally move to remove the law from Nevada State Constitution this year.
Is it still a law?
Yeah, it's still a law. It's still on the books.
Let's arrest Michael.
oh, it'd be so funny. Don't arrest it.
Oh, the 6-year terms as senators.
Yeah.
Okay, What is this question
What is
asking?
it?
I can't really understand this question.
Okay, so my asking you, does the 6-year term of office for the US protect them from accountability to the American people?
So it's saying that they don't have to be accountable to the Americans.
Correct.
Because they're,
What is the reason they have a 6-year term? What was the philosophy behind it?
well,
So they're not just with one president?
Partly, so you can check across the president potentially, what else?
So there's enough time to have like a overturn like a third of it every,
And why do they wanna overturn all 100 of them every 6 years?
because it would be like a revolutionary new government, potentially.
And why is that important to the Senate?
because it's states.
So they don't get too much power.
Partly, but it's the most powerful branch of the legislature. They wanna keep that stability in there
Yeah.
because they have so many checks over the executive. And they don't wanna overturn it so fast that it's like, this president's really powerful. And you have guys who've been in there for years going, he's not that powerful, you know what I mean? That's kind of the reason for it if that was to happen. The other thing I think about is, what is the memory of American voters, and you can use that particularly today. How long is the American memory for a voter?
Could you repeat the question?
Yes. How good is the memory of the American voter?
Horrible.
Horrible. Horrible. So you can answer, it is a way for them not to be accountable, because no one's gonna remember what they did 5 years ago. It's gonna be forgotten just like that. Because people in this election were blaming President Obama for things that he never did. But he was president when shit hit the fan, so it was his fault. And it was things that Clinton did. This is part of the reason why shit hit the fan in 2008, not Bush or Obama. So the American memory is so short, partly because of our election cycle, because of our media cycle, that accountability thing does kind of apply. Okay, so that's something else to think of. I just gotta be longer when you look at icons. You're like this. It's like a machine gun. Look at them, acknowledge they're there, know what you're saying, and then look back. So you just more understanding. You guys are 344.
Oh.
Yeah, well, we cut this a lot, and we said this would be short, so we need to add to it.
Maybe a few more, do you have any current examples in there?
Marijuana, Affordable Care Act.
Someone just Carlin, you said that.
Those two.
That's it?
We can make that paragraph longer.
I'm just thinking about the power of state, the powers of states, or republicanism and natural rights. Just maybe adding another example of one of those three in there, potentially. I think you guys do a very good job of answering the first bullet. I think you guys do a very good job of answering I think you answer all the bullets. I think you just add some more tangible examples in there.
What were the things you said we could add? Powers of
Power of states, the republicanism or regarding natural rights. Do you have an example of both Federalists and Anti-Federalists for natural rights, republicanism, and the power of states?
I'm looking for republicanism. And I can't really find it.
Well, we could talk about, I think we should talk about the small homogeneous community.
There you go, republicanism.
For just one.
Bam.
Natural rights.
Make sure you get republicanism in there.
Yeah, maybe we could bring that
Republicanism is representative democracy, electoral college. And you can talk about how the Anti-Federalists felt, as Brutus stated, that you would be so far away, you don't know your representatives, which I think you did a good job in context. And Federalist 10, which said that's okay because you need those checks against those people far away, potentially. Alright?
Hey Lila, how do you know so many quotes from the Federalist Papers?
She's a constitutional assassin.
She did 3 in the last room and 1 in this room, and they're all different, and I was just like, oh my god.
She's our Chase.
Yeah.
Pretty good.
She forced her to learn them by torture.
What's the first 10 amendments to the Constitution called?
Bill of Rights.
Oh my gosh, Bill of Rights.
What is it called?
Bill of Rights.
Bill of Rights.
What were you saying?
Bill of
You
Rights.
saying Bill of Rights.
You just stop.
Bill.
I thought it was Rights of Bill, and then I started laughing.
Have you been to Colorado lately?
That was not as bad as his last room mess up though.
What?
Your Plessy.
Oh yeah, I said Plessy versus Ferguson. Many
Was it-
people thought was a good thing.
And then it came